welcome, welcome. We're back in the studio for the Beyond Face Value Show. I'm Dr. Jill Wade, and I'm so excited to be here today with you. It's kind of that whole new year, new you kind of feeling out there in the world right now. And I want to talk to you about one of the hottest things at the dental practice right now, again, which is Invisalign. Yes, we have been Invisalign providers for almost 20 years now, but for some reason, it is just really spreading through like the nation, it seems like right now. We have tons of patients interested. It is really become the adult method or want that I see so many adults wanting to change their smile. And so today we wanted to start a 2-part series of this podcast about the 7 reasons why Invisalign is something that you may want to consider. And so today I just wanted to welcome my wonderful guest host, Miss Laura Edwards Lewis, back to the studio with me, except she's in Santa Fe. She's away from us right now. But welcome, Laura. Thanks for joining us all the way from Santa Fe.
So happy to be here. And I'm excited to talk about this topic because we always have a pre-production meeting, right? And we talk about some things that we're going to talk about. And I'm telling you, after we did that, I actually sent a text to my oldest daughter. I'm like, hey, you need to check out Invisalign. And these are the reasons why. So we are talking about the top, really, technically, the top 7 things you need to know about Invisalign. And we can say, but we're afraid to ask. I know that's corny, but anyways, I'm excited.
Me too. I love Invisalign. It's so simple and so easy. And so absolutely one of the first questions that I always get is, can you tell if someone is wearing them? And guys,
this blows my mind.
I know. I was going to do something today and I totally walked out of the house without them. I was going to actually start the whole podcast with my Invisalign in my mouth and let you figure out if I had them in or not. And of course, I walked right out of the house without it. But they truly are clear. And so that's why I think adults love it so much, is because they can work, they can be on Zoom, they can be giving a presentation, teachers can work in them and speak in them and lecture and teach all day long, like you name it. I can't think of one thing that somebody job-wise would be doing where they couldn't actually wear their Invisalign all day and all night.
I mean, and, generally speaking about that, because I think the first question I have about that when you go, well, are they invisible? My question is like, and we're going to get to it, is why do they need to be wearing them all the time? And that's going to be a little bit later when you're going to be talking about what the process is and all that. But it is very interesting. And you don't really know, like you said, if someone's got them in, unless you're like, and we could maybe have Emilio, our producer, pop in the picture here of Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes out on the field, and always has one of the clear aligners hanging out of his mouth and his teeth. And it's not what do athletes usually wear are like guards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're usually a lot thicker and a lot thicker, trying to create some shock and absorption for some of the things that they get hit with. But I would assume for him, having something that big in his mouth is a little bit too hard to speak in. It's a little bit too hard to call out, the plays and things like that. So he's found kind of a happy medium where he's more into that smaller Invisalign-like aligner, that clear aligner that we keep talking about. So yeah, he's a great example of somebody who obviously is seen all the time wearing his Invisalign, which makes me happy.
Yeah. I know. And it really just rolls right into the number 2 on our list is when people wear the clear aligners, Invisalign aligners, does it make them talk funny? Can you tell at all if they have them in?
Well, I would say that give me a week, like the very first week, you've got to kind of learn how to maneuver around them a little bit. They're foreign in your mouth. So just like anything that you place into your mouth, gum, candy, anything, it's meant to kind of create some stimulation in your mouth so you actually begin to salivate a little bit more. So the very first week, you might be I always kind of laugh and say, a little bit more slurpy. I said, but that goes away because once you kind of get used used to it, you're good. And then your tongue, your lips, and everything else moves all around it just like normal. And maybe every once in a while, you might catch a hint of like a little lisp or a little S that kind of gets out of your way. But I have a bonded lingual retainer in all the time, and that still happens to me every once in a while. So when I say most of the time, like nobody would know if you didn't tell them that you have them in your mouth.
So that's a curious thing. So when you have the aligner in your mouth the first week and your mouth starts to salivate more and all that, I guess that's just a reaction to a foreign object
Yeah,
that
just
you're
a
going to
little
wear all the
stimulator.
time. Is that right? Is
Yeah,
that
that's
what's
exactly right. And I always tell people that the first work week is probably the hardest of all the weeks, just because also the inside of your mouth, so the inside of your cheek, is getting rubbed on just a little bit. I mean, you're not used to having anything in your mouth. So it's just a little bit of a rub that first week, but that never happens again. So after that first week, you are completely comfortable with them in. Even when it's time to change to your next aligner, that never happens again. So I always tell people, just get through the first week. It's not a big deal. You'll be great. You'll be talking. You'll be controlling your saliva, all those kinds of good things. We make a little joke about it because it's just part of the fun of getting used to them right at first.
well, it's a little different than having a mouthful of metal, right?
Right? I
which
mean,
which is a whole different experience.
traditional braces, when I was growing up, that's all we had. So I can remember being called brace face back then, metal mouth, all those kind of little terms that we used to have because it was just tons of brackets, tons of silver, the bands sometimes around some of your teeth. They hurt really bad when you kind of got started because of the spacers to get the bands on your teeth. All of that does not happen in Invisalign. And I know we were going to talk about that a little bit more here in a minute, but that's what makes clear aligners / Invisalign so amazing as a service. Adult style braces.
Yeah. And it is something which, I know that because there's so much information to cover in 2 different episodes, but it's one of those things that, it can be a very, very slow, gradual process where you're not wearing them all the time or you wear them all the time. And I can't wait for you to describe and tell us what this process really is. But I think it's pretty cool that, adults with, teeth that are misaligned and, I don't want to ask you this question real quick because some people as adults are like, well, I've had my teeth are like this, they are already crooked and everybody thinks, my boyfriend thinks they're cute or whatever else. But really, there's a health benefit to straightening out your teeth and that people really should consider that as well, besides having more straighter teeth for cosmetic reasons. But isn't that right, Dr. Jill, let's talk about the health benefits of straightening teeth first before we go into the process about how you even get started with this.
Absolutely. Well, my whole philosophy is to really get down to the root cause of any issue. And not to get into too much detail, but a lot of us, the reason why we needed braces in the first place, the reason why we needed to go through some type of orthodontic treatment, the reason why our teeth got crooked in the first place was that our breathing was having issues. And because of that, our tongue was having issues and our breathing the air in and out of our mouth was giving us actual mechanical issues in our mouth and was making our arches, okay, the U shape that your teeth all make in your mouth, it was making it too small. It was making it, not wide enough for your tongue and for all of your natural teeth to get into the right place and to get them where they were kind of like little picket fences, all lined up beautifully and straight together. So the root cause a lot of the times was because of breathing issues, nasal issues, large adenoids, tonsils. It can be a whole bunch of different things, but that's truly the root cause of what causes the crowdedness in the first place. So what we're doing with traditional orthodontics or with Invisalign is to actually put them in the place that they were kind of made to be in the first place. God made them that way, and they just didn't get there. but that's how they were designed and that's how they were meant to be. And they were also meant to be that way so that when they were together, they actually function properly. So when they're not together properly because they're crowded, twisted, like I said, not expanded enough, then they're not fitting together. So they're actually going to cause more natural damage over time to each other because they're going to click around and chew our food and all those kinds of things in the wrong way, in the right way for you at that moment. But if you really look at it from a textbook standpoint, they're not in the right spot. They aren't forming, and the peaks and the valleys aren't going where they're supposed to go. So when that happens and you get a peak and a peak that all of a sudden are touching the wrong way, they're more apt to break. They're more apt to chip. They're more apt to wear down. And so when you do any type of orthodontics, you're putting them in the right place for function. And so that's what we love about it is you're really creating a situation where you're taking care of your teeth. You're going to get them to last longer. It's like for those of you who have tires on your car, if you let the air out on too many of the tires and you run on the highway with two of them very flat for a long time, then you're going to wear down the tread and you're going to wear out your tire and you're going to have a blowout if you're not careful. So this is like making sure that the air in your tire is right, that they're rotated, that they're always kind of functioning properly. It makes them last longer. Maybe not the greatest analogy, but you understand what I'm talking about.
That's really great. It's actually awesome. And I have to tell you, this is really news to me about what you just said about the cause for teeth becoming more crooked and misaligned. You were talking about some other issues that perhaps, if someone says, well, these crooked teeth run in my family, and maybe there's a genetic predisposition with everybody in the family that has these issues with breathing and things like that, and this misalignment happens. So I think it's a really interesting food for thought about why, the big why. And I also love your explanation about maintaining, just like the tires on your car. If you can maintain your teeth and put them in where they are supposed to be, really, ultimately they're supposed to be there, that you're going to be able to maintain a healthier smile for a longer period of time, healthier teeth. You could keep your teeth perhaps, because you're not having the damage or even having some sort of decay or whatever because of the misalignment. So I love this, and I think it's a great consideration, especially for adults who maybe didn't have the opportunity to have braces when they were younger, and as an adult they're able to have this option. So let's talk about the process. I mean, what is the process to get started, and how often do they have to come in, that kind of thing? So let's talk about step number one.
Step number one is just get into the office. We have a great way to actually three-dimensionally show you exactly where your teeth are right now on a screen. Okay, it's called the iTero machine, and then we can run it through a simulator through Invisalign, and it will actually simulate what your teeth are going to look like. Now, every once in a while, it gets it off because it's a 2 or 3 little minute computer. It doesn't have me telling them where I want them to go down the road. But for most people, the simulation is really cool and really exciting. And so many of us are visual learners, right? And so to me, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I could tell you all day long what your teeth are going to look like straight, but until you see it, and you see it in a picture, like instantaneously, even though you haven't had years of, training in dentistry, you're going to be able to see and visualize what your teeth would look like if they were straight. And then that's what we use to kind of go back and forth together to figure out, like, okay, if you had a magic wand, what would you change? Where would you want them to be? What is it that you don't like? All those questions that we talk about and we share with each other is super important, because then I can make sure that your expectations are correct and that I can fulfill those expectations, because that's what it's really about. It's not, do I want them exactly where I want them? Like, where do you want them to? And can we come to some type of, discussion that not only are they going to be cosmetic and you're going to like them and I'm going to like them, but I'm also going to like the function of them, which is what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. You aren't supposed to understand the function. I am. And so that's why we want to look at all of that. So when we come in and we're able to digitally scan, which creates this picture that I'm talking about, we also take pictures. And those are the two main things, along with some x-rays, just to make sure that you're healthy, gums and teeth and bone, and that you don't have a lot of cavities and things like that. But that is basically the diagnostics that we need to get you started in Invisalign. Then it's all my job after that. It's me going in, talking to the doctors at Invisalign and creating your case digitally. And that's how we do it. We go back and forth until we see the end results. When we like the end results, then I push yes. And that is when Invisalign will make all of your trays. And then they send them to us. And that's when you come back and we actually get started by delivering your first couple of sets of trays. And we can talk about that more here in a few minutes. And that's how you get started. And then we tell you all the great, do's and don'ts and what we want you to do in order for it to work. I don't know if I answered the question completely for you, but.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I know that we're going to be talking about some other steps about this in our next episode. But I just think this is an amazing option. I love it. I love that you're so enthusiastic about it. I love that people are all over this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is because I am passionate about health and wellness, just like you are, Dr. Jill, that this really is not only creating a beautiful smile, it's creating this health, elevating the health of individuals, because I know you talk about this all the time, about the health of the mouth and how it can even affect your entire body, including your brain and your heart and those kind of things. And this can only help, right?
Absolutely. I was just thinking about a conversation that I had yesterday with a patient that came into my office, and we were talking about how she really needed to be expanded. And so the best way I can describe it to you guys is that her mouth very much is in the shape, her arch is very much in the shape of a V right now. Her front teeth are dominating her smile, and it's too constricted, and she needs to be changed to a more U-shaped arch where it's a much more beautiful smile. It's more attractive to people so that you can see not just the front teeth, but you can see all the teeth down the sides, like a Julia Roberts kind of smile. But guess what? From a health and wellness standpoint, it's even more important because it allows her tongue to stay down in her mouth and not also be constricted. The cage, and this is what I was talking to her about, the cage gets released. So if you're too constricted, there's this like cage with this big tongue in there. And how could you possibly breathe properly? But once expanded and the tongue has some more room, it actually lays down into your mouth like it's supposed to and opens up the back of your airway. Well, that, why is that important? Well, we all need to breathe, and we all need to breathe really, really well, because it not only helps you during the day, but it helps you at night too. And this becomes this really connected part or piece why, what's going on in the oral cavity, how you're breathing, and your sleep is so tied together. And if you didn't know, you're only really truly healing at night when you sleep. You're only really processing thoughts at night when you're asleep in the right deep sleep patterns. And so breathing properly so helps you get into the right breathing, the correct sleeping methods at night. And so this is, for some people that come into my practice, this is almost a health and well-being reason why we do Invisalign, almost as much as why they may be, we're interested as well from a cosmetic standpoint.
And that's beautiful. And I love that, especially with sleep quality improving. They're going to be mentally and emotionally more healthy, balanced, right? They're not going to feel exhausted if they're getting better sleep. And we've talked about this, how important sleep is in one of the other episodes. Just go on our YouTube channel or I'll go on your favorite podcast streaming platform and look for those episodes, because it's a really interesting thing about improving your sleep and the ways that Dr. Jill talks about it. But just even thinking about Invisalign as a way to help someone improve their overall quality of life, it's just a really cool thing. It's an amazing thing. And it's so simple. And we're so excited to talk about it. And I know that what we need to do is probably wrap up this one so we can come back and talk about the rest of the 7 things you really need to know about Invisalign in our next episode. So I'm excited about that.
I love it. Thank you, Laura. And yeah, let's get going on the rest of these wonderful reasons why everybody just needs to be considering Invisalign if they haven't and they're not totally happy with their smile. See if this is one of the options for them.
Also, to help us grow and expand our reach, be sure to like and subscribe to this show on YouTube or your favorite podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever you prefer. Just remember, it's time to live your legacy now. I'm Dr. Jill Wade, and this has been the Beyond Face Value Show. Until next time.